I work closely with national, state, and local organizations on how the immigrant rights movement can work more seriously with state and local policies. I've worked with the New York Immigrant Coalition to help design their first statewide policy blueprint on immigrant rights. I've also worked with the California Immigrant Policy Center, who has worked over the past 2 decades in transforming California from being the most restrictive to being the most progressive on immigrant rights in the country. Through this work, I have seen the harmful impact of our immigration system. I've also seen organizations and officials come together to uplift and to improve and protect the lives of immigrants. I believe that everybody in the United States should have rights. This is why my scholarship focuses on resisting unjust federal laws through sanctuary. Undocumented people live in fear. Fear of state and local police entangled in immigration enforcement. Fear of simply going to a courthouse or health facility or their workplace or their kids' schools because of how and where immigration law is being enforced in our country today. I want to share a story to help illustrate what's at stake today. Guadalupe is a mother. She worked at a miniature golf course and water park in Mesa, Arizona, earning $9 an hour to support her 2 little girls. In 2008, Guadalupe was at home when she answered the door to find herself being arrested by county sheriffs. Her crime was using a fake Social Security number to work. Guadalupe's 2 little girls were born in the United States and were US citizens, but Guadalupe had come to the United States in 1996 at the age of 14 without authorization. Guadalupe was undocumented. After county sheriffs arrested her at her house, they transferred her custody to Immigration Customs Enforcement. ICE allowed Guadalupe to continue to remain in the country, but required her to check in regularly with the Phoenix local office. After living in the country for 30 years, and after checking in with ICE regularly for 9 years, Guadalupe and her 2 little girls' lives changed forever in 2017. Without any advance notice, Guadalupe went to her usual meeting with ICE, only to be arrested and processed for deportation. Local activists protested outside the ICE office, chanting justice, and even attempted to prevent vehicles from leaving. But Guadalupe was deported. Today, Guadalupe remains separated from her 2 little girls who are here in the US as US citizens. America has wrestled with unjust and dehumanizing laws for much of its history. No one is illegal. Undocumented is a civil violation that we created in our immigration laws. We can resist and we can change our laws. We know this because we have been here before. I now want to tell a different story. I want to share a story from much earlier in American history. Shadrach Minkins was a runaway slave. At the age of 33, he fled slavery from Virginia, headed north, and found freedom in Massachusetts. Living freely in Boston, Massachusetts, he worked as a waiter at a local coffee shop. One day after leaving work, Shadrach was arrested by federal commissioners and slave catchers. They took him to a nearby federal courthouse where he was held in order to be transferred back to slavery. Seeing this, abolitionists mobilized. They first went to the Massachusetts Supreme Court, filing a writ of habeas corpus. This would have allowed the state court to take custody of Shadrach. It would have delayed his transfer to slavery and given him a chance to defend and fight for freedom in court. The state court chose not to help. Instead, the state court chose to comply with federal law rather than to resist it. Having no other choice, abolitionists then stormed the federal courthouse, and they physically removed Minkins. They took him to a nearby attic to hide him until it was safe for him to flee north to Canada to freedom. Shadrach was able to live a life of freedom in Montreal, Canada, where he opened his own restaurant. Abolitionists did not just aid in the escape of runaway slaves. They led movements across northern states and cities, pressuring officials to pass personal liberty laws. These laws created new rights and protections for all blacks, including runaway slaves. These laws resisted the enforcement of unjust federal law. 4 years after Shadrach has escaped, another incident erupted in Boston. Anthony Burns was also a runaway slave, living freely in Boston, where he worked at a pie store and a clothing store. When Anthony was arrested, abolitionists once again mobilized. This forced the federal government to send over 2,000 troops to Boston. Anthony was returned back to slavery, but abolitionists did not stop there. They turned their sights to Massachusetts. They led a campaign to pass the North's strongest personal liberty law, and they were successful. This new state law barred all state and local officials from having any role in enforcing federal fugitive slave law, and it punished those who did. This new law created a new crime for removing any black person from the state, and it provided state resources to defend fugitive slaves in court. The US Constitution and federal law, on the other hand, provided rights to slave owners to reclaim runaway slaves in the North. This effectively made runaway slaves illegal. We have been here before. What my research shows is that local practices and policies of sanctuary emerge in response to unjust federal laws. Sanctuary humanized runaway slaves, and it humanizes undocumented immigrants as part of our communities, as deserving of rights, as humans, as people. What my research also shows is that sanctuary is more than resistance. Sanctuary creates new rights and protections when none exist at the federal level. It did this for runaway slaves, and it does this for undocumented immigrants today. We have been here before. To transform our immigration laws, we need to humanize it by legalizing the status of all undocumented people. This will transform the lives of 11 million undocumented people living in the US today. This will transform the lives of 8 million US citizens who are living with an undocumented family member. This will free them of the perpetual fear of deportation or separation. To transform our immigration laws, we also need to limit who can enforce immigration law and where immigration law enforcement takes place. Enforcement should not tear apart our communities. Rather than thinking about sanctuary simply as resistance, I want to end my talk today by suggesting that we look to sanctuary as providing a model for how to transform our unjust federal laws and the immigration enforcement regime. Thank you.